by myself. I think this last 10 years.
So when your mother married your father, they married, once again, where did they get married?
Louisville.
Louisville. Okay, and that was around what year, you think?
13.
1913.
The spring.
So he must have come over on a furlough or something from
He came over and got her, and I have a long letter that he wrote somebody in Newcastle about a trip he had made on the Atlantic earlier in the year. So they must have decided after he left and he came back and got her. And they stayed in Jerusalem, and then they started overland to Turkey. And that's where they met T.V.
Okay.
But you see, as a child, I wasn't much interested in Turkey. I had been to Singapore and Hong Kong, Tokyo, and places like that. And I remember them vaguely because they all had such wonderful outfits.
So when your father left Turkey, it must have been in 1914.
Yeah.
And then he went to England?
He went to London. You see all these people he had batched with in Haiti didn't have the big wheels anymore.
Okay.
And they appointed him to a prisoner exchange board. He was neutralized. And we went to South Africa because the commander-in-chief of the army of Austria and the big part of the German high command were down there big game hunting, you know, when the war broke out.
Okay.
So it took him a couple of years to get rid of them, trading them back and forth. And then after that, by that time, the Atlantic was too dangerous and everything was coming across the Pacific because the Japanese were holding it open. So all the stuff on the way to Europe came by Durban.
Interesting. South Africa, yeah. Okay. So he served then, when was his last consulate? In terms of, if we were to list his consulates.
After the war, he was called to Europe to do some reparations treaties. And they asked him where he'd like to live, and he said southern England because he had all these British friends. And so Lady Astor was making a terrible scene because the man there spat tobacco juice all over everybody. So we went there, and also Lady Astor's aunt, who lived down here in Clements Bottom, was a great friend of my grandmother's, and that made it nice. It was all very...
Did you say where he was originally from? I don't remember.
What?
You're saying it. Where was your father originally from?
Carrollton.
Oh, was he? Okay.
They moved over to Newcastle for about 10 years because my grandmother had terrible asthma, and they thought getting her out of the valley would help. But it really didn't, so they came back to Carrollton. And that's when they bought General Butler.
He was born in 1861, right?
That's
so.
right.
All right.
Okay.
We don't have a date on exact date of birth, though. But we had an exact
But we have all these wonderful materials that you gave the Historical Society. They've been...
What's the connection between Butler, General Butler, and Bedler Park? And
well, it was named after him. He's the only really famous person we had at Carroll.
Well, there must be a few famous people, like your dad.
J.
Or
Leiter
depends
Donaldson, Mary, J. Leiter.
Well, I
James
mean,
Handy Ellis.
in the early days, though, he was a big wheel.
Not just a little
Do
spoke.
you hear these book reports on the weekends?
No.
Somebody on them said General Butler was his great uncle. And that he was famous all over the South. They called him Spoon because he picked up the silverware every time they had a banquet of any sort.
A little light-fingered, was he? Or
Yeah.
keeping souvenirs?
Well, I don't know. I thought he was a respectable man. He was a great friend of my grandfather's, although he's
Maybe melted it down.
But he sent them all home to a man here, his best friend, who turned out to be a cook, and he compensated all of it.
Oh my goodness.
And then we had another collection that I grew up with. But we sold most of those so that I could go to college. And then I inherited a lot from a friend in California, which I sold because an Oriental carpet can't be packaged. It just comes out of pieces. This is a American thing.
Well, a lot of these things are, you know, these are connections with the past.